trusted information is a scarce commodity, and reliable facts is something when there's a world where suddenly people talk about their own facts.
Welcome back to this week's episode of The Executives, the show where we navigate the intricate world of executive leadership, exploring strategies, insights, and personal stories of successful professionals shaping the global business landscape. I'm your host, Majid, and joining us today is Stephanie Blenckner. Stephanie is the communications director at SIPRI, where she has led global strategy and outreach for over 16 years. With a background in natural sciences, she works at the intersection of peace diplomacy and public engagement, translating complex security issues for policymakers, media, and the public. Let us welcome Stephanie. Hallo und herzlich willkommen bei The Executives.
Thank you, Majid. Herzlichen Dank. I'm happy to be in your show. Thanks a lot.
So I try to do justice by quickly explaining who you are. 16 years just in communication at SIPRI, you have been doing a lot. So would let you now quickly take the stage and tell us more about yourself.
Yeah, thanks. Maybe one of the interesting parts of how I ended up here is that I'm by training a marine biologist. But, I figured out that statistics and sampling is not really my life. And I also figured out that it's not very helpful when you're getting seasick as a marine biologist. But I found myself communicating about the issues instead. And then I was aspiring a career probably in scientific publishing, National Geographic, something along those lines. But then I ended up in Sweden, and here in Sweden with the language, so I ended up in the communication area instead. And first I worked for a natural science think tank here in Stockholm. And then after some years, SIPRI, the Stockholm International Peace Research Institute, was looking for a communication person. And I thought it's probably good, as long as I talk about important issues, it's good to change the topic. So that's how I ended up in global politics.
And how has the experience been so far? How has it been?
It's an interesting journey. When you start off, in my previous engagement, there was more an advocacy job. When you want to protect nature, you come with strong messages, and you try to do pushy communication. And coming to SIPRI, I learned that the world is coming to me, and they want to hear, and I also cannot say always everything, so it was a really different communication landscape. And it's really, until today, I'm still enjoying it a lot because it changes, sadly, with the world changing, with all the topics. But there's a lot happening, and the type of communication is very variable, so it's really interesting.
And also because of the generations, right? But we get into that afterwards.
Yeah.
We get into that afterwards. I tend to ask every guest absolutely random question, for example, I asked one person, what if they won the lottery? So, no, I'm not going to ask you that question. That's too easy for you now. So, everyone has this secret food combination they like, which is sometimes very weird as well. So what's that for you that you actually don't admit, but you have to today?
A secret food combination? Oh, well, I think people who watch me during lunch have all sorts of comments. People comment a lot that I eat butter without bread. That could be something. I could have butter on a cake. That's something people comment on a lot. I can also have cornflakes with Fanta or Sprite if there's no milk. But it's not very. I'm not very role model style in that.
Everyone has weird food combinations. I can tell you mine. I put milk. And it's a very common drink in Pakistan, and it's really good. Take milk, you put a bit of sugar in it, and you put 7-Up in it.
Oh, wow.
It's one of the best things for if it's too hot, it will reduce the heat.
That sounds oh wow, interesting. That sounds something I would actually try.
Yeah, I remember one of my German friends saw it, and he freaked out. He was like, why would you do that? I'm like, well, why won't you do that?
And it reduces the heat?
It reduces the heat inside, because we eat very spicy food.
Yeah, of course.
So we find ways that will actually kill the heat inside the body,
Oh, wow.
And also, it's also very hot in Pakistan. So it's right now probably 40 degrees, 45 degrees or something.
Here in Sweden, you rather have some hot chocolate and you have some alcohol in there to keep you warm.
Okay, yeah, true. But Sweden is also like a little colder, right?
Yeah, that's true.
But today we are sitting because we have a very fancy topic, which is communicating peace, the role of media, strategy, and global engagement at SIPRI. Before we talk about all of the cool stuff we have, I would quickly ask you to maybe explain for people what is SIPRI, because not everyone knows that there is an institute in Stockholm, and they have a pretty cool office, by the way. They are doing something with respect to peace.
Yeah, so it's still a very unique role as I see it. You know, SIPRI, it's formerly a peace research institute. But and we've been created at the height of the Cold War. It's a bit of a situation like we have today. The world was not very much in agreement then, and people really needed facts to inform the debate. So we are one of the key things we are doing is actually to provide facts to the policy debate globally. And this is about the world military expenditure. It's about how many countries have how many nuclear weapons, who's shifting, transfers weapons from where. But it's also, and the role we are having then is really, if we put out the information, that's really the information people need. So that's a huge demand. And also when SIPRI speaks, like whenever we have any evidence, any findings on the situation of peace and conflict, the world is actually paying attention because we are a very trusted brand. But it's also that we're bringing adversaries together who otherwise wouldn't talk. But we can speak more about this. But we are doing a lot of publications, but we are also trying to get people together to actually be involved in complex situations in regions where situations are tensioned.
And because I mean, like the younger generation, right? Especially the younger generation, right? Because I want them also, like I feel there's like a gap between the older generation and the younger generation, which I think used to happen before as well. It's not something new, because when I see my parents' generation, it was much different than us. And now, thanks to technology, social network and so on, things are even more different, right? So how would you actually justify the importance to someone like a Gen Z or Gen Alpha who doesn't understand, even though they have technology at their palm, like they can swipe through a video made by someone in Africa or someone in Thailand or in a village, So how would you justify that we do actually need something like SIPRI?
That's a really good question. It's also really important for us because I would probably start with that we've done a lot of work, for instance, in the Sahel region with young people who how they perceive their security situation when there's military in the country or unclear power. We try to bring their situation across, and then so that young people in other areas see what benefits they have in a peaceful world. I think people who are born in the Gen Z generation, they have not been experiencing the German division or they only know the war from their grandparents possibly, but then they see the world today, and that is what they relate to. I think for young people, it's probably also important how you communicate it. They do see that there are strong voices in global politics. They do see that there's a polarized world. There's tons of communication. It's on TikTok, on various platforms. And I think the key then for us is to make sure how we can make this world more stable for them, how we can address their concerns. We need to pick them up where they are. And in various regions, it's different concerns. And in the Sahel region, which I mentioned previously, the key concern for the young people, they were simply to have a job. And to understand then that it's not the radicalization but that they align with the wrong groups, probably because they pretend to have the solutions in Somalia or in the Sahel, which we've been finding in our work. Then it's important to say, find your trusted people, find the sources you trust. It's a lot about, but I'm hopeful actually, because I see that in the education these generations are getting, they learn a lot about source verification and whom to trust, whom not to trust. I think some elderly generations are probably more susceptible to all this world of disinformation.
That's true. I mean, also now we are entering an age, or we might have already started entering it, with the whole AI, like creating so much fake so easily.
Yeah.
You give audio of a person and it's immediately able to generate content on the same audio, and it's pretty good. Like it's surprisingly good.
Yeah.
So I think it's also that we try to educate the younger generation as well, that how to what are we doing, what are institutions like SIPRI doing, what is the whole point of NGOs, non-profits and for-profit organizations and so on. Because whenever I sit down with the younger generation, right, I live in Germany, so I sit down with a bunch of my friends, they're much younger than me, and when I realized it, they already know they cannot buy a house. But they have the pressure from their families, from the parents, that hey, you need to be able to buy a house, and they're like, it's impossible, because one, when their parents bought the house, the interest rate was 0.6, 0.5%, which is nothing.
Yeah.
The houses were cheaper, so you know the thing Bausparvertrag,
yeah,
which actually gave you 39 euros and 98 cents a month. That made sense because houses were much cheaper. If you work for 20 years at 40 euros a month and then you do the math, it becomes a good money for the whole house. But now the houses are $500,000, not even houses, apartments are $500,000.
Yeah.
So it's really becoming hard for them. And they understand that they don't want to bound themselves to a single address. They want to have the flexibility as well. But
I think that's a good part, because if the more we understand also the lifestyle or the lifestyle they are doing, and I really like that you're engaging with them so much as well, because that's something also I think is very important for us also at SIPRI, and we have also, thank goodness, a lot of young researchers as well who transport that during lunch and so on, so that we mix that, like many nationalities and age groups. But it's about reaching their values also, and a lot of people I meet in that generation, and I'm also really not part of it in that sense anymore, but I appreciate the contact they have really strong values and which they stand up for. And I think that is also something where an organization like SIPRI can tap into how this is in sync with them, but it's reaching them where they are.
True. So, and also I think connected to this, right, I see that you have a lot of experience down your sleeve, 2 decades. It's a lot of experience. So I think even someone like me, right, can learn a lot from you, because it is like this. And that's why I started the whole podcast. It was your problem for yesterday may be my problem from tomorrow. So I can actually learn a thing from anyone and everyone, which is something I've been learning. My learning since I started the podcast has been exponential, which brings me to my second question, because you have spent almost 2 decades in high-level communications role, right? What were the biggest challenges faced when moving into international diplomacy and peace building?
I think, like I briefly connected to, when you come from marine protection advocacy style, to have the political sensitivity in every communication you do, it's a different landscape in global politics. And SIPRI, so the good news with SIPRI is that we are a trusted actor, but that doesn't mean we are not acting in a sensitive field. So the whole process of communication, and before we publish things, we have red flag reviews. I try to be sensitive to many potential views in a region, and especially, and that has also been just increasing since I started at SIPRI, because with the acceleration information, the whole social media polarization, all more channels, all more bubbles, you have to handle such a minefield of challenges sometimes. It's a daily adventure.
I mean, I can imagine everything. When you wake up, there's something new happening, right? So also considering how fast technology is moving as well. So I mean, it's I think also important to understand what are the ethical uses of technology, correct?
Yes.
Because I think that's something, even not just ethical, just how should you use technology? Because now if tech gets into the wrong hands, we have a big problem.
Yeah.
Right. So.
And it's also in that what you said, the speed, that the moment we wake up, there's more news. It's also this careful choice. What discussion do we as SIPRI jump on? What can we wait with? And what requires also deeper analysis? And does the world have time to wait for the analysis? Or do we need to have an instant feedback? And these are daily choices. And I think this will only be even further increasing as we try to make it, like you say, through the disinformation landscape and all these fake realities.
True, I agree. So I'm now curious about like what would your day look like? Except today, I know today it's a special day. Now we are sitting and we are discussing this. But what does your normal day in your job look like at SIPRI?
Probably fair to say there's seldom something like a normal day. But you know, because we are a large team, we are doing, as I tend to say, we run on 10 highways at the same time. We have a daily check-in very firmly online. So anybody who is anywhere, so just that we're in sync, what needs to be out. And while we issue a publication, there's probably media inquiries coming in, which tells us, oh, we probably need to work on some statement on that topic. At the same time, probably there's a delegation visit. We greet them. Some publications need to be here. People have been traveling. They come back with experiences, which we showcase on the entrance monitor. So it's a lot about content. It's about branding. It's having a newsletter and also seeing what audience needs what. And every day is different, and it's at high speed nearly always.
Okay. Yeah. Now I recently learned a new word which is called hyper agility.
Hyper agility.
I was like, weren't we already too fast? Like, why do we need even more speed?
Yes,
you know.
Yeah.
And this term has been going around in startups because now it's like 0 to a million is like a matter of weeks, you know. Now it's not even months now. It's like they need it like this, you know. But I mean, you have been at SIPRI for 16 years. There must have been some really cool and important lessons, you know. So what do you think were the most important ones?
I think coming to such a globally trusted brand like SIPRI, one of the lessons I've been really learning in various situations over the years is that it's so important whom you partner with. That sounds like a dating market or so, but I tell my colleagues as well, like, because they probably coming to SIPRI and somebody says, oh, should we co-publish? You feel honored, you feel flattered, but it's often because we are a trusted brand, a lot of people want to be with us in our limelight, and we have been learning also in the past then that sometimes this has not always been to SIPRI's advantage, or simply that we also think a bit more strategically, who is a good partner for us? So that is something which I really learned in this strong brand environment. And what I also learned and realized that you take for granted what you work with, but over the years, in the world, in the direction the world is going, I've been really noticing and drawing this conclusion that trusted information is a scarce commodity, and reliable facts is something when there's a world where suddenly people talk about their own facts. That's something which in my world had not happened before. And I wouldn't have thought that this is a challenge that I'm fully on board with, that people in communication or in international politics have various opinions. But that we are now in a world where we have forces who deny a scientific-based worldview and have alternative facts. And we are a research institute which is presenting as much evidence as possible in situations. That is something I'm still learning how to handle, and I think there's a strong risk with it also going forward.
I agree. I mean, it's probably not easy, right? You're dealing with the political parties, you're dealing with influential stakeholders, right? I mean, director of a company, still easier to deal with, right? Or a VP, C-level, you can say no to them. Worst case, they will fire you.
Yeah.
That's what happens for saying no. I mean, I have said no multiple times because I used to be product person. I've said no to CEOs. A good CEO never got angry. He was like, okay, justify it. Like, why do you say no?
Yeah.
Because I think I have more knowledge than you, I have more experience than you. And then when you explain to them, like, this is my assumption, because I'm the one talking with the customer, so it doesn't make sense. So in your case, I feel the meetings that I have with my customers are much more, you know, like whenever I have meetings with them, it's much more relaxed and, you know, like, yeah, cool. Also tense moment at time, but I feel the meetings you would be having would be more, you know, because I understand that if someone misuses the brand of SIPRI, it would actually cause waves that, you know, like people afterwards also start like losing trust, and 60 years, right? So it takes time to build trust.
Yeah, exactly. And you, like clever people in other business say, like you build up a brand over a long time, but it falls overnight. And this trust is one of SIPRI's clear brand values, and that can be tricky then. And it's really this finding like-minded actors, as I say, like governments SIPRI works with, or other partners, foundations. We always have to have a careful check, and it has to be perception-based. We can think something is absolutely fine, but then if the world perceives something different, that is also a risk. So there's a lot of new communication aspects always to have in mind. So keeps you on your toes.
I can imagine. I mean, I can imagine that it would not be easy. And then you have more than 150 countries, so all of them are potentially your stakeholders, right?
Yeah.
So, and every country has a different culture.
Yes.
I mean, I come from Pakistan, living in Germany. I think it's also like, because in Germany we have a different methodology, right? We have Sundays, everything is closed. So you need to do shopping, anything you do has to be done on Saturdays, right? So I don't know, is Stockholm also the same?
No, actually that's something you appreciate in Stockholm, that you can actually buy 24/7.
Oh, that's cool.
It helps people like me who are not as organized in their daily routines. So you can, and really large supermarkets are open until 10 p.m. So that's absolutely a good service.
No, the 10 p.m. Germany also now changed, at least in Berlin. I know Bavaria is still like till 8, but I mean it's. But it's also a good way, like, to help people, you know, like Sundays to relax and so on. I also understand the perspective, and I really like it as well. Then you're not always on the run that, I need to do grocery on Sunday, you know. So So
but I think you make a good point of this cultural understanding, and I think that is super helpful. And I think that is also what gives me hope, that if people, you know, and that is another aspect in communication I find really interesting to play against, is like the online world versus actually having real conversations and real meetings with people. So
it's important, right? You learn and grow. You pick the best, and what suits you, take it with you, you know, for life. I mean, like I just had toast kagen yesterday. It's apparently a very traditional Swedish dish. I tried it for the first time, and apparently it's pretty good.
Yeah,
it's pretty good. I was surprised.
I'm glad you liked it.
No, I was very. Normally, I'm like, if the food is not too spicy, I'm super picky. But it was one of those dishes
which
was
like, super spicy.
No, it's not spicy. It's basically just I put pepper on it, but it was pretty good. I mean, if I could put some sriracha, that would.
But this is, in the end, you know, we work a lot with, you know, famous Swedish diplomats, and one of them, Jan Eliasson, he always used to say, when we come to the idea of identity, like what country you identify with and what identity you have, and because you're like nicely merging, you know, Pakistan aspects with Germans here, I was reminded how he said, like, you know, we could have several identities, and also in a peaceful Europe, like, pick the best of each country, and then you can have multiple hats and become a true European person.
True. I don't know who said that, but it was some famous person. But they say that they're a global citizen or something like that.
Yes.
I can't remember who said it, but
no, I don't know either. But yeah, that's in the same.
But I sort of like that approach, because I mean, maybe today I'm sitting here. I mean, I'm visiting Sweden for now. I'm living in Germany. Maybe in 10 years I'm sitting in, I don't know, Korea or Vietnam or, you know, Australia or US. No one knows that, right? I mean, so it's because that's what life brings, you know?
Yeah. But I think that is this exchange. I think there's a lot of hope for a peaceful world.
I agree. And I think it's also, you need to have hope.
Yeah.
Because hope is key to keep pushing forward.
Yeah.
Because if you don't have hope, you will never push forward. You will like end up with dead ends, you know, all the time. You will be like, you know what? So, like you start digging at one point, you reach the dead end. You're like, oh no, you know. Then you start again because you still have the hope. Like the famous quote which goes like, at the end of every tunnel there is light.
Yeah.
But then my professor used to say, but after another 200 kilometers, there's another tunnel. And that's life, right? So you have challenges, then you solve the challenge, throw it out, move to the next one, right? So it's always like your life is filled with tunnels.
Yes, from one nightmare to the next. But I think I very much agree with you, and that's also the only thing which can keep us going. And also, don't look at the whole mountain of the problem, because then you just get heart clapping, but just take one step at a time.
I think that's also important, right? Like, we live in a very different age. When I started working, it was very different. Now it's very different, and in 10 years from now, it will be very different again.
Yeah.
I would be very surprised if things are still the same. Yeah. And this basically makes it more and more complex for even SIPRI. Like, how should we do research? Because the data that you have from 40 years ago might not be as useful, right?
No, they give you actually they are in demand again, because they give you a trend indication, like
true.
how bad things are like today compared to the past. And when people think, okay, it's not yet as bad as at the peak of the Cold War, then we're back into a wave thing, okay. But certainly since the end of the Cold War, things have been getting really bad. But then a longer perspective makes you probably see things also slightly more nuanced sometimes. But yeah, it depends also how you want to frame it.
I agree. I 100% agree. How you want to frame it, plus what do you want to perceive from it?
Yeah.
I mean, is the glass half full or half empty? If you're a person who only wants to find problems, you will only find problems.
You will find it, and that is also what I find difficult and challenges today. That there are so many bubbles where people who have intentions to have half glasses half empty get a lot of voice. And in a former communication where before everything was digital, these people probably would have been too shy to stand on a public marketplace and shout their negativity to everybody. But in a private little room where they sit, they can communicate in a completely negative spirit without that anybody, can
True. I learned
change that.
I learned one thing. So if the younger generation doesn't like something, they say we will cancel it. That's how the terminology goes. Like, so it's like we will cancel it.
Yeah.
But it's cool how the words differentiate between how I use them and how the younger people are using it, which is also fine. I mean, that's how languages evolve, right?
But it will be interesting to watch if, in this language, then, if the younger generation, when they come to our age, or my age at least, finally, then probably there's a resurrection of a personal conversation, and nothing is purely digital anymore.
True. I think I understand your point, and I can already relate. Like when I was much younger, like probably like 11, 12, things were different for me. And my dad used to tell me a lot of things. I would just be like, like why? Like they didn't make sense that
What
time.
universe are you from?
Like, what are you talking about? Things don't happen like that. But eventually now, as I grew older, they started making sense. They started making a lot of sense, and I'm like, he was actually right all along, So because he had more experience than me, he knew the world better than me, he had seen more people than me. I was just a kid, right? So my job was only fool around, and fool around.
Yeah, you need to. Yeah, and you probably don't confess it always, but you see at some later stage, you see some points in what they were doing and saying.
Yeah, and I think it will be the same with us, with me and you, with our generation, and also with the younger generation. It will be the same. They will eventually also realize that we actually all align at the end of the day, right?
Yeah.
Because if you look at the circle of life, everyone is born, unless we start making robots. So everyone is born, everyone goes through a cycle, and then everyone dies.
Yeah.
Unless they discover immortality, which I think it's another question. But now coming back to the question, so SIPRI produces extensive research, right, on conflict, arms control, and diplomacy. How do you ensure that this research reaches the right policymakers, media, and public audiences?
Just a minor challenge. No, it's really difficult. But the bottom line is pretty boring. If I just say it flat out, it's about collecting, assembling addresses and assembling contacts. It's such a huge thing in this. And I see, and that's one of my favorite elements in this whole world of communication. There are some people who I would call, they go around like dissemination people. They think they publish something on a website and then everybody will find it. But I think the key is really to see where is the people they want to reach, how do they receive the information, and tediously look up these newsletters. Try how to contact, how to make it into their contact and into their content feed, and it's not a lot of rocket science, but one clever mentor I had in communication in my career once told me that whatever message you have will only ever be as good as your recipient list. So we really have a very, and that's something actually our collaboration partners appreciate. We have very dedicated lists so that we also don't trash people with the information they don't want. So it's various topics and, the media, but it's a very tedious baseline, but it's a very it's a very conscious thinking behind that you get the right message to the right person, and ideally with the tool they also communicate. And because SIPRI has this wide audience, we have books, and we have to be on tweet length. So it's a whole breakdown and a large playground.
Cool. I mean, the lists, like different kind of lists, it makes sense because you also mentioned that you don't want to bombard people with information. You want to make sure that the right message gets to the right person in the right tone.
Yeah.
Because I remember when I used to work with the financial institution, they had like 3 different emails, the same message, 3 different emails. One was for startups. So startups got like a message in a very different manner as compared to the same message. The tone was very different for a mid-sized organization. They had a definition between 200 employees and 600, I think, and startup was 0 to 200, and then anyone above 600 was like a corporate. So the way corporate got the message was very different. That was like proofread like probably like 7-8 times.
Yeah, it's great.
But it was important.
Yeah.
Because immediately people would react differently. Yeah. Like corporates, for example, they would love to actually meet up, suited, booted, like meet up and so on, which also leads to my next question of, now sadly we have a lot of geopolitical tensions increasing, right? And also because of that there is a lot of misinformation happening every single day, every single minute now, and just due to social media, like the presence of TikTok, Instagram, Facebook, YouTube, all these social media apps, right? There is a lot of misinformation. How does SIPRI actually maintain credibility and like neutrality? Because I think that's also like very important in the messaging.
Yeah, and that's really difficult. That's difficult, but it's important, and I'm glad that you shed some light on it, because I think in this polarized world, the difficulty is really to understand where the sensitivities are in the first place, then also have the information that it doesn't feed either side, and that is really difficult because sometimes SIPRI not saying anything is also seen as if we had been giving a message, like, oh, SIPRI is not commenting on this. That means they are having this position. And in a world which is so sensitive, where we have these various wars ongoing, obviously the Gaza war, Russia's war in Ukraine, we have the civil war in Sudan. Everything we say has a political impact on either sides, and especially when you are a global brand, you have your eyes on you, what we say. So we have various procedures in place to make sure that we are navigating this as cleverly as we can and as constructively as we can. And that often means also to do silent communication rather than public communication, and inviting people for closed meetings instead of any public communication, and then just say we have discussed this so that the world knows SIPRI is discussing this, but we are not probably saying exactly what has been said because it would not be helpful for the situation. And that is then where we come into this diplomacy interface, where we work with these great previous Swedish diplomats which are still in our sphere, like Hans Blix or Jan Eliasson, the former Deputy Secretary General at the United Nations, and Hans Blix, who you know from the weapon inspections mission in Iraq. And all these people also bring this trust that we can bring adversaries in conflict situations together, but then, my God, it's really important not that anything leaks out what's said, because then the whole situation is not trusted anymore. And that can be pretty difficult sometimes. And then we have situations where we organize a meeting, probably in collaboration with one government, and then some journalists get the notion of it, and they really try to find out what's happening. They come here to the building, they hang around here, around in the bushes, and they ask the colleagues, so you have to make sure that the internal briefing of the colleagues is okay, that people feel safe leaving the building, because there's media asking them, so are you hosting a meeting? There's all these diplomatic cars out here. So that is a landscape where we have to do a very careful judgment all along the way, and we can get it wrong. But so far, so good.
I remember, I don't know what, like, there was a book or a movie I read or saw, where the news published something and they just put a question mark at the end. So the question mark changed the entire context of the whole thing. Not even the words, just the question mark. So it's sometimes important of choosing the words wisely.
Yeah.
And I mean, we live in a generation where in Pakistan we say that you want news, but you want to sprinkle spices over it. So you want to make it hot and sizzly, which sadly is the case right now. A lot of media outlets do that, but the cost of that is basically huge.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm not a big fan of the whole like sparkling, sizzling, you know.
No, and what I, without being fully dismissive, but what you can call trash communication is not helpful. That you just dash out a simplified message to get attention is not helpful then. And SIPRI's role, because you said like sort of how SIPRI can contribute then, is at least, if nothing else helps, that we bring the facts to a sensitive situation, that at least any argument is based on the same ground. And that even that can be difficult enough.
I 100% agree. I mean, one wrong word blows the entire effort that you tried to put hours of work, hours of meetings, negotiating something, and throw everything out of water because someone misunderstood the word.
Yes. And then in this today's polarized media landscape, also it's amplified in these bubbles, and this is a landscape which we have to maneuver more and more carefully.
Yeah, I mean, oftentimes I'm from Pakistan, right? So people often ask me as well about the whole situation there. I would really like to live in a world where I don't have to wake up and be worried about my family or my friends' families, regardless where they come from. You know, I would really like to live in a world where it's more like, you know what, let's actually focus on doing something cool.
Yeah, cohesion on different things. It can be like food, what you said, or costumes, something, travel, or like. But I think in a three-dimensional world that's my hope for the next generation as well. That there will be connections which go beyond the politics.
I agree. I believe that food is the one thing that brings people close. So whenever I had a conflict in the team, conflicts happen, right? So in the team, I would just bring food for everyone, put them in a room. I would say, you know what, figure this out during lunchtime. Come back and I want to see some happy faces. I don't want to see angry faces that this guy did this guy did that. I don't want to see that, because at the end of the day, you are going to see each other again tomorrow and the day after tomorrow and the day after tomorrow. And it's going to be 8 hours or something, you know. So that's almost like a marriage. So if you are doing that, so do it happily, you know, like.
Yeah, that's true. It's a lot also what spirit you bring to your day.
I mean, there are days where you don't feel like working, right? No. So just close your laptop and go, right? So, like there's like the German phrase, right? Meine Fresse.
Yeah. Yeah, you can get back to that many times. Yeah, and take a deep breath, and yeah.
Exactly. But I mean, I try to bring a little bit of fun into the whole episode today, because this is a serious topic.
Yes, I'm sorry. The news I have to share are not very hopeful often, but there are hopeful elements to it.
I know, but it's also important that we try to keep ourselves a little bit light, because we are also human beings at the end of the day, right? If we don't think there is hope at the end, or there is no light at the end of the tunnel, we will basically enter depression and anxiety, right?
No, definitely. And that is also when I often, in our context, when people say, why do you always want to work with these difficult issues? But there's hope, because there's so many great people who actually, in a single situation, make a difference. So you focus on those.
True. And now you work with journalists, policymakers, and international organizations, right? So how do you work with them to amplify the SIPRI's research and insight?
So actually, the good news is that it's both the military delegations, the advocacy organizations, media, they all amplify our information in their way. So we try to cater them, like for instance, when we launch major data, we have a special agreement with advocacy groups that they get a glimpse of the message so that they can prepare their campaign. Or we collaborate with the military to actually formally or informally educate them about this wider aspect of security, which is so important, which will help them. You know, like military, the SIPRI has been really putting the issue of climate change or human security as a wider picture of threats and risks into the landscape of what peace and security is. And a lot of people are now entering into that reality that even a great airplane, like for the military, cannot start if, you know, the ramp is flooded because of higher sea levels. But that's not the only aspect. There's other aspects where climate change really becomes a security situation, and there we see we can really feed the different groups who make their own cases then based on the information. But it's a wide field.
True. I mean, this brings us back to the first point, right? 190, 200 countries, so it becomes, you know.
Yeah.
And every country is different, right? So.
Yeah. And they all have their own concerns, but it's, you know, like a mini United Nations. When we welcome all the defense attachés based here in Stockholm, you hear then what the countries are, what they find important, and where different elements of SIPRI can come in. But back to what we said, it's very much knowing what information is of help to whom.
True. And I think it's important, also as your job, right? I mean, this is part of the most important, I think, part that you need to make sure that timely messages are sent out.
Yeah.
Which brings me to my next question of crisis communication. I think, I mean, if a server is down for a software company, cool. We just put it on the website, like, you know what, we are sorry, the server is down. If it's, like, I remember if once we had a problem with our server, it was down. But in your case, it's like, not the same, because you're covering global security issues. So how do you handle crisis communication, especially when you're dealing with policymakers?
Yeah. So if I give you an example, for instance, when, you know, many of our colleagues are in regions where situations are tense. And then if somebody wants us bad, they report about it and say, and we had that situation. We had a colleague who was at a conference in Russia. And it was alluded then that this means that SIPRI is endorsing the current situation in Russia and has been subject to a disinformation campaign. Then the challenge is not only to get that narrative corrected, but also understand what mechanisms are behind this, who want this notion to be put out in this way, like SIPRI as an institute being instrumentalized. And I think that is a big risk for us in a crisis situation, because we have a strong brand. So if you can say, SIPRI also thought, and SIPRI actually did do this or that, then we become instrumentalized in a different argument. So then we need to enter that argument or not enter that argument. And in that situation, because it was also in the Swedish media, we chose then to officially have a counter statement and simply, in a calm, non-confrontative way, explain that this is not the case, because this is not how we work. It was a misunderstanding or a misreading of the situation. But of course, there are forces who enjoy intentional misreading of situations, and that is something we more and more need to pay attention to.
That's also not easy, right? You need to, if someone, because you cannot control what the media publishes, right?
No. You
cannot tell them. I mean, if someone misread it and they see some spicy news coming out of it, they would use it, right? So.
Exactly. And then in many of these situations where we choose not to even respond to it, especially on social media, we learn, or speaking about my learning curve, it's very good also then just to that's a Swedish expression, to have ice in the stomach and let things ease out. Because often people or forces who want to have you say something, they live off your engagement then. I mean, you know. So keeping cool and let things ease out. But yeah, we sometimes have to clarify, and then the key is that our original information, which we have been putting out, is correct. And then we refer to that and say, yes, we know there are stories out there, but please have a look at the original. The press release says ABC. So, and then it feels very good that we have these thorough processes, that our original press release is not alluding to whatever then the misreporting is about. And it has been rare that we have been having ambassadors actually from respective countries coming here and asking for explanations. We do get that sometimes, that countries think that we have been misrepresenting their military expenditure, or we have been probably not allocating their wishes correctly, and then we say that this is not a political statement. We do the research the best we can. This is the information we have. So we always try then to have a constructive dialogue, and so far, so good.
I hope it stays good.
Yeah.
I hope it stays good, because it's also important, right? And now you partly touched upon the social media part. Now we have a massive increase in the whole digital media landscape. So how has SIPRI actually adapted its communication strategy to stay relevant with the whole modern information landscape, like TikTok and Instagram and so on?
I can fairly say, and I think it's a fair thing, I also think it's important, like I'm learning every day, and it's important that pure operationally, I try to surround myself with clever people who are representing that generation and who know how this generation would like to receive information. I think that's key, and I think good communication teams simply operate like that. And I'm really happy that I have some really good colleagues who do that. But it's also a judgment then, what train do we jump on? We try to be on most platforms now. We entered Blue Sky. We are still on Twitter, even though some major news outlet also leave Twitter, but it's still that we reach a lot of people with information on Twitter. So at this moment, we still think it's important that we are on the channels we are. But of course, you need to constantly see what these channels are used for, and we are not on TikTok yet, because I think our content is difficult to translate into engaging content on TikTok. But Instagram is one of our later additions. We have great visualization colleagues. Also, we try to enter that space more, but I'm sure we can still do more. So
yeah, I mean, there's always room for improvement, right? Like, I remember you're on a lead, you're the director, right? Communications director. So I don't think your job is to be making social media posts. You have a team for that. Yeah. You will empower them, like you mentioned about your colleagues who do the graphics for Instagram and so on.
Yeah.
So if you have colleagues who are doing it, that's where you shine. That's where I really,
and I'm so grateful for all their work, because they make us look good, really. That's really.
And I think that's how you judge a leader, right? If the team is empowered, if they are stuck in like a cage, then you realize that, okay, that means the manager is either scared or the manager doesn't want the team to grow. I mean, and also like you mentioned, right, that you realize it's not your sweet spot. I mean, let's say there's a new social network that comes up tomorrow called Majid Media or something, or whatever it is, you know. I mean, not that I'm launching a social media.
No, please do.
But I mean, there is a new thing. Maybe you will use it, maybe you won't use it. Maybe there will be someone else who's an expert at it, you know, which is fine. Yeah. Your job is to understand, right, that there is something that popped up and you need the people.
Yeah.
You know, and you empower the people. So I think that shows also that you are on the leadership side. You are also supporting your team. And I saw when I entered, right, I forgot the gentleman's name, but he was actually happy when he entered and saw you, right? So.
Oh, Benedict, yes.
So that's important, right? I mean, if the people see and they are happy, that means that's already a good sign.
Yeah.
Because in the morning, you like if you come to the office and you're like, meh, you know, that's not a good sign.
No, I think because you also have this as your idea about leadership, but I think it's really I think a happy team is much more productive than a team under pressure.
I agree. Now, because we are also coming towards an end, right? So, I mean, an hour passed. Can you imagine? Like, I just look at the clock and it's like an hour gone, you know? So I feel like I'm a good communications person.
We are an example of a real conversation, right?
I mean, that's the whole point, right? I mean,
yes.
I mean, one thing I've learned from my career is it's easy to prove anyone wrong. You can put the CEO of Microsoft in front of me. I can assure you I can prove him wrong. It's very easy. To accept that he's right is the hardest thing to do. You can tell me anything, that's what I see. So that's why I say, because the experiences are different. You know?
Definitely.
Your knowledge is different, your mindset is different. So if I see a strategy, Microsoft, I'm just giving an example of Microsoft, not saying I'm against him or something, but I mean, he's a super smart guy, you know, Satya Nadella is a super smart guy. But anyone can negate him, because if you have this perception in your mind, I don't want to agree with this guy. Or this lady, you know, so you will always find a way.
Yeah.
And your life is your life, you know, you're basically the driver of your life. So you decided, I want to go here, I want to go here. You know, we all make mistakes in our life. So it's the whole path of learning, right?
And it's always a choice.
Exactly, it's always a choice. I mean, during my career as well, I mean, when I was working at different organizations, not that I made all decisions they were correct. I made wrong decisions as well. I launched a feature, didn't work out. The company lost money. Not that they threw me out, like, oh yeah, we lost this much money because of Majid, now let's just fire him. It didn't happen. They were like, cool, so why did you lose money? I had to justify. I mean, I was scared when I had to do it, but it's the same. I mean, my domain is a little bit less sensitive than yours.
Well, it depends. It's also hard clapping. I mean, it can also get a high pulse. I mean, finance and business is also,
I mean,
you have to get things right there too.
Yeah, so normally the way I found it, like I always tell people, like whenever I build something, I always say that I want to build an MLP. The word we use is MVP oftentimes, which is minimum viable product.
Okay.
I don't go with that. I mean, it's a good word, but I go with MLP, which is minimum lovable product.
Yeah.
Solve the problem that the customer wants, like solve it immediately.
Yeah, and I like that you upgrade it to a lovable product, because then it will be more sustainable.
Because the customer wants to come back, wants to keep using it, right? But
better connection.
And now, because we are talking about different careers, so I would love to understand you. For those who are actually interested in working in international communications and peace research, what advice would you give someone like that who actually wants to join this space? Please don't say do not join this space, because I think we need people.
No, we need all of you. No, I think a key is really, I would say, is that the better you know who you are, the better you as a person align to the organization, the more successful you probably will be. Because I think the better you know what type of communicator you are, what message, what role you want to have yourself in this space. Do you want to fight for something? Then you join an advocacy organization. Do you want to be loud and have a strong voice? Then you find the organization which comes close to your personality. I think then you are in sync, and then you can also give this special alignment, because you understand this. And this is just my personal experience. I feel I very much align with SIPRI as an organization. I feel very comfortable in this space of fact-based, moderate, diplomatic information, because this is how I would see myself as a person in that space as well. But then, of course, what is also key is what gives you energy on a Sunday morning. I tend to talk a lot with my younger colleagues who are in the space, and they grow their careers and they don't probably know what choices to take. Like, what gives you energy when you normally are tired? And that is a good indicator of where to keep your nose going. And it can be a subject area, or it can be a topic or it can be a way of working. I think you need to get the energy somewhere from tough times, because there are tough times in any job. So I think these are two key points. that's probably something where you come from with your business experience, like how people define success and what is a great career can mean very different things to people. And I think it's really good to know how much remuneration means to you, or how much titles mean to you, or how much a feeling at the end of the day, oh, I've contributed to something valuable means to you. I think all of these are choices where you, with clever thinking, you can narrow the space.
I agree. I mean, it is important also, like on top of that, right? I mean, people need to understand themselves. So if now someone comes to me and asks me for advice, I tell them, like, don't think about money. Money will come eventually. Like at one point, you do make money. I mean, and if your goal is too much money, then you need to think differently. Then you need to see if you want to do a job, because in a job, you will rarely be a millionaire or a billionaire, right? I mean, unless you join as a co-founder, a startup raises a few billions, and then you basically take an exit. That's the only way I know you can make millions. Otherwise, if you're working in a big corporate or any organization, hitting $1 million is not easy.
No, but it's like you say, it's about early choices, like what matters to you.
Exactly. That's why I tell people that do an introspective of yourself. You know, what makes you happy? What do you want to do? Because if you want to be a C-level person, brace yourself, because there is nothing called a weekend and there's nothing called a holiday.
No.
Because then you need to be on your toes all the time. I mean, it might be a contradictory opinion to a lot of people, I know that, but that's what I've seen, you know, because if someone is working at 2 a.m. my German time, and they are working, sitting in Vietnam or wherever they are, or Pakistan or India or Philippines or Australia, but they're working their normal time, they have a problem, I need to be there to help them. 2 a.m. or not, doesn't matter, because they report to me, so I need to help them. That's why I tell people, do an introspective, what is important, what is not important, then decide on also the parameters that, you know, where, and then your job actually becomes passion, you know, like you wake up in the morning, you're not like, oh shit man, I need to work today. You're like, oh yes, for example, the gentleman today I saw in the morning, he was happy. It seemed he was happy, you know. I hope he was happy.
Yeah. I'm sad that you don't meet more people of my team. You could do a reality check, but I hope everybody is happy. But it's so much like you say. If you need to do this even at, you said earlier, also 8 hours a day, or like you say now, like in the middle of the night, you really need to make sure that you like what you're doing.
Exactly.
Because you need to run it also through some years. Yeah.
But I think that's it for today. So thank you so much for joining us today, Stephanie. It was truly very insightful and very informative. You know, at least I learned a lot of things. I mean, I hope others do as well. Is there something you would like to say as like a closing remark?
Oh, thank you, Majid, really, for this inspiring conversation and all your really good questions from all aspects to my life. It's really interesting. Maybe just my final mission to this communication landscape. I think I'm hopeful, because I do believe, you know, with my background in natural science, we are humans in the end. We are three-dimensional people. We will learn to live with AI, but we will also realize where we are stronger than AI, because we are three-dimensional. And I'm believing in the survival of a three-dimensional conversation in personal space like we had today. I really enjoyed it. And I think more and more people will see that this is the true way forward in communication.
I 100% agree. I mean, I'm very grateful that we actually spent the time to discuss. I think there were some very important topics as well. And thank you again. And I would love to say now to our listeners, thank you so much for tuning in to the Executives this week. If you found this episode valuable, you agree or disagree or have ideas or want to learn more about SIPRI, so the links would be mentioned into the description. Just click those, and you can also connect with Stephanie. By the way, she does speak German. She does speak German. She actually told me that we should speak German. Yeah, maybe. But
next time.
So one word that would stay with me is hope. And with that, I would like to say, until next time, this is your host, Majid, signing off.